I messed up tonight. I lost another fight. I still mess up, but I'll just start again. I keep falling down. I keep on hitting the ground. I always get enough. See what's next. Birds don't just fly. They fall down and get up. Nobody learns without getting it wrong. I won't give up, no I won't give in till I reach the end and then I'll start again. No I won't leave, I wanna try everything, I wanna try even though I could fail.
Hello once again, everybody, and welcome back to Zootopia Minute, the minute-by-minute podcast where we examine every minute of the hit Disney film Zootopia and analyze it. And boy, what a week it's been. A week and some days, actually. Been a little bit since our last episode, I know, and so much has happened. We'll probably get into that a little bit towards the end of the podcast. We'll see. But for now, in case you've forgotten, I am your host, Simul, and I am joined here with my co-host,
Choco, and I just came back from vending at a pony convention.
Yeah, that's right. What was it? That was PonyCon in New York, right?
I don't know what the title is because it's technically the original PonyCon. It's actually what BronyCon branched off from.
No, isn't that the other way around though?
Might be, well, if we consider it a convergent evolution, the BronyCon was started in New York, then the group that wanted to remain in New York formed Big Apple PonyCon, which eventually just became PonyCon, and then BronyCon, of course, went to Baltimore when I was living in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
But it makes it tricky because I think they're just PonyCon. And the one I went to 2 weeks before was Pacific PonyCon. And the one I'm going to in the next month will be Winnie City PonyCon. So there's a lot of them
There's a
just using
lot
the title
that are
PonyCon.
just called PonyCon, yeah.
But it wasn't even in New York. It was in New Jersey. So, yeah.
Really? The one you went to?
Yeah.
It wasn't in Secaucus, was it?
It was in Long Branch, New Jersey. And it was quite a distance away. So it's pretty hard to get to without a car. I had a friend drive me there. Well, it's right by the train line, but you would have to somehow get from the airport to get to Manhattan and take some type of subway or train from Manhattan down there and then walk about 4 blocks to get there.
Did you fly into JFK?
I flew into LaGuardia and I flew out of Newark.
I see. Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
I've only ever been to JFK in New York, and I do not like it as a layover airport because there's no food.
Yeah. I think there's the LaGuardia, the only food place they had was one Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh boy. Dunkin' Donuts, big on the East
We'll
Coast.
talk about that a bit later, but let's first get into the minute because I am super excited because it's the first appearance of my fox husband, Nick Wilde.
Yes, your fox husband. Yeah, so this is going to be minute 17. So that means if you're following along in the film Zootopia, you're going to be listening from the timestamp 1700 to 1759.
And I guess for those laymen out there, that is when Judy actually first hears the first traffic the low
ding
parking
of the
meter
traffic
ding,
meter.
And she has a smug look on her face, and it ends when we have a smug look from Nick, just as an elephant in a blue shirt and camel pants walks in front of him.
Yes, indeed. So most of this minute, a good portion of this minute, was basically just this awesome montage of Judy handing out parking tickets. Because if we remember from our previous minute, she had been told by Chief Buy One, Get One, Chief Bogo, to give out 100 parking tickets in the day. That was her quota. And she said, you know what? No, I'm going to step it up a notch. I'm going to give out 200 parking tickets all before noon. And so here we get a nice little montage of her attempting to complete that challenge. And so we get some awesome music going. We hear lots of dings. The music kind of plays with the sound that the meter makes. You hear the did-it, and it goes with the music very nicely.
I don't think I noticed that. That's pretty cool. The only other time I noticed sound in a movie actually go along with the score was in Dark Knight Rises, when Bane was exploding the city, and you heard the explosions in time with the drum beats.
Yeah, I love when that kind of thing happens.
And then it's funny because I flew into LaGuardia and I looked down at New York City's Manhattan skyline, and I realized that in Dark Knight Rises is the exact same. They didn't even bother to change it up to make it look like Gotham. It was just Manhattan.
Yes, Manhattan, you will be mine.
So we have this catchy tune in the background. I think I heard some words, but I couldn't really make them out. Were you able to catch what the tune was in the background?
Were there lyrics? Were there any
Yeah,
vocals?
it was like da 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 da.
Oh,
Da, 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 da. But I think they were saying something. I just couldn't make out the words. It just sounded like very, very light vocals.
I heard nothing vocal, like at all. Actually, I might have to go back and listen to it.
All right, I'm trying to look it up if it's anything. There's no soundtrack lyrics.
Like if there were vocals, I don't think it was English. I think maybe it was just a cappella noises.
I think it's a cappella noises, and because it was so faint. I was wondering if they were chanting something, but I couldn't make it out.
I do like that song though. It's gonna be stuck in my head for a while. Dun-dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun-dun. It's catchy. A lot of the music in this movie is really great. The
reason why it's
soundtrack was
been winning so
fantastic.
many awards.
Is it? Is that like part of the nomination? Is for
Actually,
good soundtrack?
Let's check.
Let's
Zootopia
check with our
soundtrack.
one Google of
One
the day
Google
that we
search.
never actually adhere to.
Alright, Zootopia's soundtrack is composed by Michael Giacchino, who did Incredibles,
And
Sky
Shakira.
High, Ratatouille, Cars 2, Incredibles 2.
They're making a third Cars, apparently.
And they're finally killing off McQueen, which I'm happy about.
Well, are they? Yeah, because I saw I was in the theater to see Rogue One, I think.
Yeah.
And a trailer
Same.
for it came on, and you didn't even know it was Cars till the title comes up at the end. But it was super dark. It was like a slow-mo clip of like a car crashing and like flipping over. And like then at the end, it's like Cars 3. And everyone's like, what the hell?
I think it made all the little kiddies cry. Rogue One was making a lot of kiddies cry.
I enjoyed Rogue One.
Why is the funny robot being killed?
And why is Alan Tudyk bot being killed? Alan Tudyk is great in whatever he's in. He was Wash in Firefly. That's where most people will know him from, or that's the favorite role, I guess. But he's great with voices, too. People don't realize he's super huge into voice acting. He was also King Candy in Wreck-It Ralph.
Yes,
And the Duke of Wesselton. And
he was also the chicken in Moana. Actually, that was a joke when Flavin was on for another podcast. We were reviewing the movies of 2016, and the joke was I would pronounce it wrong each time. I'll pronounce it a different way.
Every single thing will just be.
But we actually, but we brought up Alan Tudyk because ever since Disney started doing the switch from traditional animation to 3D animation, Alan Tudyk has been a voice in every single film. And he's always played the red herring character. So you initially think he's the villain or not the villain, but he always plays the red herring. So King Candy in Wreck-It Ralph, he played the Weasel in this movie. He played Duke Wesselton in he played Duke Wesselton in Frozen, and he played the chicken in Moana. But the reason in Moana that he did not play any main character was they wanted a predominantly Polynesian cast, and he isn't Polynesian. Mm-hmm. But they wanted to keep the tradition of him being in every single Disney movie post whenever he started. So they gave him the chicken part.
I still have not seen Moana, but it looks good. I need to.
It is good, but there's a reason why Zootopia is winning all the awards, and he is not.
Fair enough.
And I mean, Moana was not. Oh, also, he was in Big Hero 6 as the business scientist man.
I haven't seen that movie either. I really need to, because everyone says it's amazing.
Big Hero 6?
And it has Fall Out Boy in it.
Yeah. It's so good. In fact, I'm thinking about cosplaying as it because I'm going to the Disney Expo, the 23 Expo. And I'm trying to think of which Disney characters I could cosplay, and because there's so few Asian Disney characters, it's either between Moana or Big Hero 6. So I'm thinking I might cosplay as a character from Big Hero 6. So I've been watching that again to find a character I might want to cosplay as. But, yeah.
Good luck to you. Well, back to the minute, I suppose. What's great about this first bit is we have this awesome montage where Judy's handing out the tickets. And again, it's one of those times when it's clear that the animators or the layout artists, whoever's designing these sets, basically, get to have lots of fun with visual gags, especially, and some puns. Mm-hmm. There's one part you can see like the names of some of these businesses. At one point, Judy jumps up and puts like 2 tickets at once in like 2 cars next to each other, but she has to jump up high to reach. And in the background, there's a shop. And the shop's name is Urban Snout Fitters. So I thought that was fairly clever.
I also noticed with the visual puns that all the parking meters have little bear or bunny, like little cat or bear ears on them.
Yeah, it's so cute. I love it so much. And again, I think you pointed this out once before, but the crosswalk is like zebra or tiger stripes kind of pattern.
I'm wondering, like, we don't have parking meters that look like human faces, so...
Yeah,
Why
but
did
you know,
it do in this world?
it's room where it's vaguely because okay, parking meters don't really look like that anymore. I mean, in some places they might, but in Seattle, now they're these sort of boxes, these like solar powered boxes. They don't look like the classic parking meter on a pole anymore. But those old school ones did have somewhat of an anthropomorphic look to them, I always thought. Or not necessarily that they're humanoid, but you
Yeah.
look at it and you could picture like a smiley face or something on it, you know?
Well, that's actually intentional. Well, I mean, they weren't intentional faces, but it's something in human psychology that we know where normally if you look at almost any object, you could put a personified human face on it. So something like an electric outlet and
Well,
stuff.
we're programmed to recognize
Yes.
faces, facial features.
I actually wrote a paper about this in university, but I forgot exactly what the exact term is. But I'll think about it later.
But it's really interesting though. It's part of pattern recognition and that kind of thing. It's helpful, you know, if you're living out in the wild, you need to be able to recognize faces. And oftentimes things with faces are danger.
Oh, it's called prosopagnosia. Prosopagnosia.
Interesting.
I actually remember this because it's actually a reason why characters in comic books and characters in anime are really, really effective with identifying with the audience. Because when you watch a movie, a live action movie, or I guess a comic or an animated show that looks really realistic, it's somewhat hard to identify these characters because they look so unique as specific actors or drawn a specific way. But the more simple a face is drawn, the more amplification you have with putting yourself in
amplification
the
through
most
simplification. We talked about this with Twilight too,
Yes.
back in one of the earlier episodes.
Exactly. Scott
the hollow
McCloud's
vessel.
call back to a previous episode. But yes,
Continuity.
but same thing happens when we look at faces. That's why, though anime characters don't necessarily all the time look like real human faces, people identify closer with them. And that's actually a reason why, if you look at a lot of cartoon shows for kids, they're drawn in a very, very simple style and face recognition. But going back to the animal puns, so actually in our first appearance, where Nick appears is when a lamb or a ram is driving out with a car, with a truck, and honks at Nick.
The ram almost rammed him with his car.
Exactly. And actually, the truck he's driving, it says fresh dough. But dough is not spelled like cookie dough. It's spelled D-O-E, like the animal deer dough.
Oh gosh, I don't want to see what's in the back of that van. Jeez.
Yeah, so it's a pun, but it's a pun with some really horrible connotations.
That's either like cannibalism or like not human, but I guess animal trafficking or something. That's kind of scary.
Yeah.
Lovely.
So, especially since it's a female deer. It's
Doe, a deer, a female deer.
So I'm wondering if they actually do sell dough, but like cookie dough or bread dough, but.
God, this is getting deep.
It's
Just the dark alleyways of Zootopia. The
Just
Zootopia
imagine the
underground.
Yeah.
Zootopia at night, but it's like the at symbol.
Oh, actually, speaking of which, I was thinking about some fan fictions that we could read later. But actually, the last two cons, we had at least two people come up to my booth and say, "Oh, I'm actually a big follower of your podcast." So we actually do have some. Yeah,
Awesome.
I think I should have mentioned it after Pacific PonyCon, but one of the people who follow us on Twitter, I think, and actually comments on our YouTube pages, I think Brown Wolf. Yeah, he was at Pacific PonyCon as well. He stopped by and said hi. So
awesome.
shout out
That's
to him.
super cool. Yeah, you guys, if you ever see us in person, definitely come and say hi, because personally, that kind of thing makes my day. Anytime something like that happens at cons, we'll get recognized. It's validating, you know. And again, feel free to comment online as well. We love to hear you. We love to know we're not just yelling into a void.
Exactly. Let's go back to my fox husband, Nick.
Yes, your fox husband. No one else's.
He's very, very sly. He has a interesting look on his face, and it piques Judy's curiosity because she's seeing this fox causing a bunch of honking, and he's just kind of slithering around in the background. That causes her to kind of give a little squint. She's a little bit suspicious of him.
Yeah, because again, thinking about where Judy's coming from, she grew up in her, rural bunny community. And before she went off to the city, we saw this scene of her parents being like, yo, you gotta be careful about foxes. Here, take all this anti-fox paraphernalia, the fox away spray, which she had hesitated to bring with her on her first day, but she decided to pick up out of her room at the last moment. So she has that on her. Maybe she'll use it. We'll have to see what happens in the next minute. But yes, I am glad we get to see this character, because this character is many people's favorite characters. Only your husband, but many people's favorites.
I know you're jelly after our Twitter profile said we should be Valentine's dates together.
Exactly. But yes, we finally get introduced to Nick. Nick turns out to be a fantastic character in the rest of this movie. And I'm really glad we finally get to see him. Man, it took 17 minutes till we saw the second sort of main or central character.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. Well, and also going back to Judy, this is the second main Fox character we actually have so far seen in this entire film. And up to this point, the only Fox we have seen, and as we know, that's probably the only Fox in her town, is Gideon. And she had a negative impression of this one Fox. So now she kind of sees her second Fox, as we know, in this movie. Mm-hmm. So, do you think she might...
Well, you really think that's the only other Fox she's ever seen ever?
That's why I said, as we know so far, this is the on screen. This is the only other Fox we have seen.
Man, you know what? That's a good point. Actually, I hadn't thought about that. If you grow up and the only Fox you've ever met in your life is Gideon Grey, who's a jerk, obviously, as we've seen in the earlier parts of the movie, then maybe you can't necessarily blame her for having a negative impression of foxes.
But see, other people are going to say that's just an excuse for supporting institutional racism.
Well, what about that as institutional? Again, people like to throw that word out there, but it's like, what do you mean institutional? We're talking about one person.
Hashtag trigger warning, hashtag microaggression.
Yes.
All right. So, I think it's interesting that looking at just a screenshot of Nick and the sheep character in the truck, Nick has very, very expressive human eyes, and the sheep have those really dead-looking eyes. It's
because they went with the realistic, like, weird rectangular iris, a rectangular pupil thing that goats and lambs actually have in actual reality. They look so creepy,
though.
It does. It really does. But they went with that, and yeah, it makes those lamb characters look less, I want to say less human. Obviously, they aren't human, but, less relatable in a way. They're more alien-looking.
So they don't have the application through simplification.
Yeah, there's something about it.
I think it's called the disconnection, or there's a specific term in opera where you have characters that are so inhuman, you disconnect from them. Yeah, so it's easier to write them off as antagonists.
You know what? I was reading something, and maybe there is another word for this too, and this was a long time ago. I was reading some article about this, but why there are certain tropes that humans always identify as being scary, like some sort of animal with glowing eyes and it's shadowy and it's got sharp teeth and snarling. And what they were getting at with this article was saying that we tend to identify certain traits as being scary or threatening because they hinder our ability to read into the emotions of that creature. You have something that's face is very, very different from a human face. And humans are very visual societal creatures, right? They're visual social creatures. And when you can see someone's face, you know sort of what, not necessarily what they're thinking, but you understand what their intentions are, kind of. You can tell right away by looking at someone's face if they're friendly, if they're antagonistic, whatever. If you have a creature with a very alien-looking face that's not super similar to the structure we would see in a human face, it's more intimidating because we don't have that insight into what they might be thinking, what their intentions might be.
Yeah. And actually, if we want to, because this is a movie about all these different animals living together, if we actually want to look from a genetics and biological perspective, back when we were still kind of in the bottom of the food chain in terms of the environment, when the predators and predators that would treat us like prey were ones with big claws, glowing cat eyes or glowing bird eyes, big teeth, big wings, and all that stuff. So if you look at all these cultures, how they create their versions of monsters, their versions of dragons and the great titans, the great beasts, they would all have very certain traits Big teeth, glowing eye, big claws, and it's a carryover from when we were prey and had to hide from creatures like that would be easy to take us down.
Yeah, exactly. And it's part of that, recognition of danger thing, where our brains are tuned to recognize those sorts of traits because it's an advantage, basically. In that survival of the fittest scenario, it's an advantage for you to be able to do that kind of thing, for sure.
Yeah. So we don't want to go much more forward in terms of the movie, but I kind of want to bring up a point now that we do have the this discussion going, because we could identify with Judy, with Nick, and some of the other citizens of Zootopia because they have very, very human-like features. But all of a sudden, we have these sheep characters that do not look as human. They look a bit alien to us. So if you wanted to make a character in a movie that is disconnecting, that you wanted to make the antagonist in the movie with cute, fluffy animals, it would be basically characters like this. So I don't know, because this movie, they want you to kind of see all these characters on kind of the same level, but when you have some of them that don't look cute, it kind of gives the impression that maybe they might be the antagonist, or we're not supposed to connect with them at all. So I'm not sure if it's completely going with the message that Disney was intending, because right at the moment, I'm not liking these ugly rams. They look scary.
Though in not the very last minute, but when we first see Judy head into the police station, we do see some cops that are lambs or rams as well in the background.
Or sheep. We should just use a term for all of them. I forgot what the term was.
Oh, like the genus or whatever it is, the family they all belong to.
If we say lamb, ram, sheep, or whatever, we basically mean the same thing.
We mean those things, the woolen.
We're sorry for generalizing them. Yeah, we're sorry for assuming they're species, but we're just going to group them in the same category because who cares?
We finally see Nick. It's the best. Nick is adorable. I do love Nick. Nick is great.
Hey.
So
Fox husband.
Not a huge amount of content in this minute. We had that nice montage of the tickets. Judy accomplished her goal. She did get her 200 tickets. And then actually it's kind of funny. We skipped over this a bit, but I do want to go back into this a little bit. Noon hits. The clock strikes noon. She's like, yeah, 200 tickets. And then the meter right next to her pops up, expired, and it's her own little parking enforcement car. And she gives herself a ticket, which I think is bizarre.
That's the one thing that threw me off, because if you're working for the city like she is with the police force, you're supposed to park anywhere if you're on duty. And so she technically shouldn't need to take it herself.
Yeah, they did it for a joke. The more you think about it, the more it breaks down. But whatever, it's still kind of funny.
Let's deconstruct a kid's movie.
Yeah, let's just tear it apart ruthlessly, completely. But yeah, no, it's still a great scene. This montage was a lot of fun. We got those awesome visual gags, the names of the businesses in the background, all the cool ways they fit animal features into everything. Again, we see how different types of animals are leading very different lives and are maybe affected disproportionately based on their physiology, their morphology, their size especially, right? Judy gives a ticket to a mouse's car that's parked, and the ticket is like larger than the car is, and the mouse gets back to the car, and the wind blows the car away because the ticket's acting like a sail, and the car just rolls away.
Actually, that's something I did want to point out, because at first, when she jumped up to try to ticket the giraffe's car, I kind of realized something, that the windows are so high, it will be impossible to see the normal-sized cars on the street, so that could be a big safety hazard.
Yeah, why are you even driving on the same street? That seems so hazardous.
And all of a sudden, so if the regular sized cars are in danger, that small mouse car is going to be in so much more danger, because the giraffe is not going to even have a chance to see that car. So it seems like a dangerous spot for the mouse to park its car. I think if the mouse had its own little town where it could drive around, that would be fine. But out here in the opening, this is kind of dangerous. So I'm not sure. I know a lot of these things were for jokes, but when you think hard about it, it's like, I don't think it would work.
The other thing too is a mouse's car. You could fit, 50 mouse cars in the same space that one gazelle car would take up, right? So should a mouse even have to pay for an entire spot? How does that work exactly? We don't really get to see that. It's zoomed in too close.
Isn't it dangerous for it to be driving in the road with these big cars? I mean, they should have their own side work.
So many problems. They just put no effort into this movie at all.
Exactly.
Unbearable. How dare they? Well, it was, in fact, a very interesting minute, despite not having a whole lot going on. It was a very fun minute, and I'm glad we got to talk about it. But since we had our last episode, much has happened not in the world of Zootopia, but in the world of actual reality as well.
The world of primates.
The world of primates. The world of bipedal primates.
So your voice does sound a bit sore, so it sounds like you've had to use your voice a lot in the last week. So tell me what happened. I know you had an interesting adventure in your little neck of Seattle. So,
I did. So basically, since we had our last episode, some very big events have happened. The first of which, the most important probably, was Inauguration Day. We inaugurated the new president of the United States, Donald Trump, and much has happened in since the time we're recording, only 11 days since then. But the very first thing that happened that I got to be a part of was on Inauguration Day itself. There's a guy that a name many people might recognize, maybe they will, maybe they won't, but his name is Milo Yiannopoulos. And he's a big sort of, offshoot kind of alt-right, quote-unquote, figure.
Milo Yiannopoulos?
Yamana Habita Shamalamadopoulos. Yeah, that guy.
Exactly.
And he was scheduled to make an appearance at the University of Washington, which is a big public university in Seattle that I don't live very far from. And so this was announced. His appearance was announced well in advance, like several months in advance. And when I found out who he was going, I said, you know what, I'll go to that. Now, I'm not a fan of the guy. I agree with some of the things he says. I disagree with a lot of what he says, particularly just his whole format. He's what you might call a provocateur. Part of his whole gig is that he says these things that are sort of deliberately outrageous, or even if he has an idea that might be sound, he'll present it in a way that construes it as being offensive.
So
and he does this on purpose.
He's just basically a professional troll.
Yeah, he's a professional troll. That's a much more concise way of putting it, yeah. Anyway, I wanted to go see this and, hear him out, but also ask him some difficult questions, because I definitely have a lot of criticism for him.
How are you Catholic and gay?
Yeah, right. Well, so I decide, you know what, we'll do this. And if you know anything about the guy, oftentimes when he speaks at college campuses, because he does this a lot, he often attracts a crowd of protesters.
Of Trigglypuffs. They appear out of the wild.
Yeah, and they either try to, sometimes they're just protesting the event, which is fine. Other times they're trying to shut the event down, and that's usually when it gets a bit insane. And so, I have to admit that in going to this event, in the back of my mind, there was that thing saying, this could get a little bit hairy. There could be some crazy stuff here. And, I wanted to be there to see it. We're inaugurating a new president. It's part of history. I want to see what happens on that day,
Yeah, it's historical. It's the first time in 200 years we have a immigrant first lady.
Yeah, it's true. She's not the first. I forget which president.
It's Abigail Adams, the second first lady of the United States.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Anyway, so I go to this event and I know something's probably going to happen. There's probably going to be some sort of protest or something. And I get there and things are fine for a while. There's some peaceful protests, whatever. Maybe like an hour or so before the event, the doors are supposed to open. A bunch of people show up wearing all black, wearing face masks, chanting in unison and waving a flag around. And what we eventually found out that these are people that are part of some sort of anti-fascist, quote-unquote, movement. Mm-hmm. And as soon as they arrive, things start to escalate. And,
wait, I mean, they're dressed in black and they're waving flags and they're not fascists?
Well, yeah, I mean...
And they're chanting in unison?
And they're also trying to shut down an event. They're trying to prevent peaceable assembly and filter out opposing points of view. But totally not fascists. Totally not fascists. And, I don't want to get too into this. If you guys are interested, I did record some video while I was there at the event, and you can find that video on my channel. We might put a link to it somewhere. But basically, what ended up happening is me and my friends who were there with me did not get into the event because these people were blocking the way in. They forced a lot of police to show up because things were going to escalate, and things did escalate. These Antifa people started throwing paint-filled balloons and bricks at people. One of my friends got hit with a paint balloon. Not too bad, but it got over his pants. Some people got hit really badly. Luckily, I was left unscathed by the paint, and I'm really glad because I was wearing my Awesome America outfit, which you can see in the video. But it was a crazy, crazy event. And the craziest thing about it was right towards the end of the night before we decide, we know we're not getting in at this point. We might decide to leave eventually. A huge extra crowd of people shows up that had just been downtown at other protests. And a bunch of people show up, and these are the Black Lives Matter people and some just anti-Trump people that had been part of another protest. They show up. And then maybe 2 minutes after they show up, we're standing in the crowd and we hear a loud bang. And then suddenly just all these people running. And the thing is, I immediately know this is bad. That could have been a gun because, crazy enough, the day before, I'd never been anywhere near any sort of shooting in my life except for the day before when I was downtown at a bar and stepped outside to talk with a friend about some stuff. And we just hear rapid succession, bang, 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 super loud, and a wave of people running. And it was some other shooting. It was a gang-related thing at a neighboring bar, nothing to do with the election or anything. But it was just so crazy to me that 2 days in a row, I was near 2 shootings, because it did turn out, we found out later, that was a shooting at Red Square at UW, again, the University of Washington. So absolutely crazy line of events on just the first day, on Inauguration Day. And it was just incredible. I actually got invited on the radio by a local host to talk about what happened. That video is on my channel too, if people want to see it. But it was insane. How was your Inauguration Day?
Well, I am just fed up and tired of politics on both the right and the left sides. I can't stand the xenophobia that's come out from my right-wing friends, and I can't stand the bleeding heart liberal sides of my left-wing friends. So I basically just ignored the news and just went to see a movie when the inauguration was happening. So
that
I saw
sounds like the best possible option you could have taken, honestly.
I went to see The Founder, which is a Michael Keaton movie about how Ray Kroc, the guy who started the McDonald's Corporation, stole the McDonald idea from the 2 McDonald brothers, which was interesting. It's very similar to Social Network. And what I learned from both Social Network and The Founder is if you want to be rich, find 2 brothers with a great idea, steal it, make witty comments, money. But
find two brothers. It's just called Two Brothers.
Two brothers. But you sound like you were in much more danger. I avoided downtown Austin. A lot of crazy stuff. There was a big protest in front of the Capitol and the Texas State Museum of Texas History. A big protest between pro-Trump crowds and anti-Trump crowds. So I mostly tried to avoid it. But actually on my flight back from New York, like I said, I was at a pony convention in New Jersey, but I had to fly in and out of New York. That was when the big protests were gathering at most of the airports across the country. So luckily, I just avoided the big protests coming into LaGuardia, but then there was one that held us up at Newark Airport, which was a bit crazy. So I guess they were detaining immigrants there for long periods of time. So I guess there was a lot of red flags and heightened security.
Yeah.
But the odd thing was actually coming back. So because I basically fly around the country for work now. Vending at cons is basically my day job now. So to try to avoid the lines, I want to do the pre-TSA checks where you don't have to wait in the line.
And we've had some issues with airports lately.
So it's been a bit tricky to get pre-TSA because they want to make sure that you're a good law-abiding citizen and whatnot. So I applied for a meeting when I flew back to the Austin airport. I applied for an interview to do the pre-TSA. I already passed all the pre-screening online and stuff. And so I walk in after I get all my baggage just in time, and there was like one lady in the entire pre-TSA enrollment center. She's just kind of on her computer looking bored, and she's like, "Oh, what are you here for?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm here for my pre-TSA interview." She's like, "Well, are you a citizen? Because you can't do this unless you're a citizen." I'm like, "Wait a minute, what makes you first?" I didn't. In my mind, I'm just like, what makes you think I'm not a citizen? I'm like, no, I am. I applied online. I'm improved. I have an interview right now. She's like,
that's what I want to know. Like, if I had gone to the same counter, would she have asked me that?
Yeah. So I do come from California, but I do come from a more conservative family. So I always try to think that my race and my appearance is the last thing people think of. when they like, have to judge me and stuff. But this is like one of the few times where I was wondering if it's my parents that is causing this, especially with all the protests that have been going on. But yeah, so we continue a bit. She looks completely bored. To be honest, I think it was more I guess her department was going to close within half an hour, and she just wanted to wait off until work was over for her. But I was like, no, I'm a citizen. I already did the interviews online. I'm just here for the in-person interview. She's like, well, do you have a birth certificate? Because we can't take you if you don't have a birth certificate. I'm like, yeah, I have a California birth certificate. And she's like, oh, Californian. Well, you also need a passport. I'm like, well, I don't have a passport. She's like, oh, well, that must mean you're not a citizen. I'm like, no, I just don't have a passport. I have a birth certificate and I have a driver's license.
I don't have a passport.
Yeah. And she was like, oh, is the driver's license an enhanced driver license? I'm like, what's an enhanced driver's license? Okay, you don't know what an enhanced driver's license is. That means you don't have one. I'm like, you didn't even check my driver's license. You check. And she's like, well, unless you have your birth certificate, unless you have your passport and an enhanced driver's license, we can't take you. I'm like, but I already got approved online. This is just the in-person interview I schedule. She's like, well, come back later when you have everything. So I didn't want to cause any trouble, so I was a bit upset, so I just kind of left.
That's frustrating.
Yeah, so that was it. I'm wondering if maybe she was a bit more cautious because of all the protests going on.
And it could be, yeah, benefit of the doubt there, because there have been some crazy things at airports now in the wake of the immigration executive order that Trump put out.
Yeah, but I don't think I would even come off that way. Like, I was actually wearing my military school bomber jacket with my school crest and name and rank on there. My hair is nice cut short. I don't wear like Black Lives Matter shirt. I'm not protesting. I just came off of a plane and just want to do the interview, which I was scheduled for. She didn't even bother checking on her computer to see if I was scheduled for anything.
Yeah, that just sounds like incompetence.
Tossed me aside. So yeah, so that was kind of my experience. I'm like, well, I guess now is a good excuse to just get a passport anyways, just so I don't have to.
Yeah, I got to do that too eventually if I want, because I want to go to Europe and stuff. I can go to Canada because I got an enhanced driver's license, but
yeah, and there's some cons I do want to try out. But yeah, so that was kind of it. Aside from that, the PonyCon, I don't know. I'm definitely out of cons. I don't think I'm as excited to connect with the fandom as much as I used to be. I think I've grown out of all the crazy fan stuff. It's just it was a really tiring con, and oh my god, as a panelist, this was the worst con to go to as a panelist.
Well, I heard there was some drama at the con. I mean, there's always con drama, but I believe I heard about a charity item getting stolen.
So, disclaimer, the staff of the con were great. I don't have any complaints. The staff really worked hard to try and make it really good. I have avoided this con for 4 years, though. The last time I was at the con was in 2013 when it was still known as Big Apple PonyCon, just because they were a bit sketchy. They're the only con in the country that asks for vendors to pay for an application fee.
How big of a con is it, like attendance-wise, would you guess?
They said that Saturday should have had 700 to 800 people, which would have probably made it the same size of Pacific PonyCon, but I didn't ask to check. But Friday, they said there was about 300 people Friday.
Oh, so not like significantly huge though.
It's very out of the way, which makes it's in a beach resort in New Jersey. So it's in the resort town. So it could have been nice in the summer, because in the winter a resort town is basically dead. So there's nothing really to do. And it's really out of the way to get there. Actually, the reason why I avoided the last few cons because they were either in like some rural part of New Jersey or New York that was impossible to get to, and it was always in a sketchy neighborhood. In fact, the year I decided not to go in 2014, they were held in a rinky-dink rundown movie theater with the vendor tables set up in the hallway of the movie theater, and their hotel was a mile walk away. Ooh. So yeah, it was a weird con. So the vendor people were very, very nice. But apparently one of the charity auction pieces, I don't know too much about it. So in the Brony fandom, there is a charity group called
the Brony
Thank You Fund, and that's also a tricky thing. I don't want to put my own personal commentary on them. I'm not really too keen on some charities because
the events that occurred.
Yeah, so the events that occurred, they had a poster which I guess was signed by a bunch of show staff. Now I'm not sure if it was just the staff who appeared at this convention or if they slowly were collecting this con after con, because it did look like there was a bunch of names on this picture. So I'm assuming probably about 30 to 50 signatures were on this. I'm guessing these are big names. It was apparently stolen Friday night. I was told it was stolen from the vendor hall, which if that was the case, it was lucky that nothing at my booth was stolen because I'm one of the few vendors who don't lock up. So I just leave everything out.
Don't say you don't lock up. Don't say it.
Well, I take my money with me, but all my product is out. But yeah, so it was stolen and it was constantly being retweeted, and I think eventually it got posted to a lot of the big pony news sites like Equestrian Daily and stuff.
Well, that's how I found out about it. Was Twitter, I think.
Yeah, so it was a bit upsetting, and one of the attendees at the con was joking that his roommate took it.
Yeah, you told me about that.
Yeah.
What an idiot. Why would
so
you do that?
he joked that his roommate took it. So the charity, they're very, very upset. And they called the police right away. And so the police actually had to go to this guy's room, interview all the people rooming there, and investigate to see if it was stolen or not. And they find out that the guy was just trolling.
Why?
But
why
it wasted
would
a bunch
you do
of
that?
police time. Yeah.
And police's time and everybody's like.
And it caused a big controversy at this small pony convention to have this happen. So I don't think it ever got found. And it's a shame that if you steal something, if you don't steal at all, but of the things you could steal, stealing a charity piece, something that's supposed to help raise money for cancer research, that's not cool.
Like,
so
what the heck? Come on.
I hope whoever stole this gets what's coming to them because it's not a cool experience. But yeah, so that's kind of what happened at the con. It was an interesting event. Apparently, there's also a teachers' convention and some Hasidic Jew convention happening at the same time. Because what happened was there was the big rave on Saturday nights where they had a bunch of the Brony musicians playing. And I guess one of the con chairs for the PonyCon went to the teachers' convention and brought all these middle-aged female teachers, marched them across the hotel, and brought them to the rave. So I remember in about 11 p.m. at night, I see a crowd of 30 to 40 middle-aged women hooting and hollering all the way to the rave floor.
That
and
is
they stayed there for an hour.
Fantastic. Now that is what cons are all about right there.
And then it's funny because Hasidic Jews specifically cannot work on the Sabbath.
Right.
But the rave was after sundown. So then
so they're just waiting outside man,
so
we can go ham as soon as the Sabbath over.
Yeah, so after all the teachers walk in, all of a sudden see a bunch of Jews wearing their little locks and their hats.
The curls in the
all
hat, yeah.
Yeah, walk into the rave. So I guess it was a crazy rave at the con. So, I mean, that was an interesting sight to see.
That sounds so great. Was there any sort of, political murmurings at the con? I don't know how a con might be so shortly after the inauguration.
Well, obviously, a lot of people just didn't want to talk about it. In fact, even if it wasn't directly talking about politics, I was rooming with Igor, who does the Milo ties, and we were talking about Trump, but not directly. We were talking about probably 3 degrees of disconnection from Trump. But once we were mentioning this, I forgot what the topic was, but once we were talking about, one of our other roommates was like, can you please not talk about politics? I want to have fun this con, just don't talk about politics in this room. And we're like, okay, sure. It seems like that was kind of the atmosphere. No one wanted to talk about politics. However, I have a badge that says Make Equestria Great Again, and those badges basically sold out. So a lot of people were wearing my great Make Equestria Great Again badges.
Oh, goodness gracious.
So that was the most political it got.
I can kind of appreciate that people don't want to hear about politics at a PonyCon, because that's been worrying me if that's just how it's gonna be now at cons, is everyone is talking about it, because I feel like that would just spoil it for a lot of people. So that's nice to hear that it wasn't such a huge thing.
I guess the other big thing was the Calexic thing apparently got approved for the ballot in 2018.
Wait, and it's actually going to be on the ballot?
Yeah, that kind of made big news, and I actually remember a lot of people tweeting me, messaging me, even come up to me at the con saying that this was my fault. I do so much pro-California artwork and stuff and propaganda that a lot of people were saying, oh yeah, this collects things, all your fault now.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh my god.
So I'm like, oh shoot, if this actually happens, I'm like the Betsy Ross that night of this or something. So
well, we'll have to see. It'll be a bit of a wait. But man, we've actually been going for quite a while. This will be quite a long episode for people. We haven't had an episode this long since episode 0.
Since we had a big break off, this is your treat to you.
Might as well. Yeah. Yep. So, thank you so much for listening to Zootopia Minute. We really appreciate it. If you like the show, please give us a like on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube, follow us on Tumblr, on Twitter. It's at Zootopia Minute. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Coledaniel, and that's COLEDAIGNEAULT.
And I am at meta_artist on Twitter, so you can follow me there.
Indeed. Yep. Well, thank you guys again for listening. Stay strong, stay vigilant, and we'll see you next time.
And make Zootopia great again.
Make Zootopia great again.